Howdy, y'all. Welcome to the Southern Steel Show with Brody Huff. This is a recorded intro after the fact. For some reason or another, I'm assuming just basic technical difficulty, or not recorded correctly. So y'all are going to kind of be thrown in awkwardly to the conversation, but it flows well enough after that, so just bear with me. Thank y'all and enjoy. I want to start us off like I try to usually do and read a little bit out of the Bible. And just for a little context, the mission of this episode is to more so answer, you're not going to answer it, it's been debated for decades, centuries, millennium, whatever. Is war justified by the Christian? Like, is aggressive warfare justified by the Christian? Is defensive warfare justified by the Christian? What kind of warfare is justified for Christians? Reading out of 1 Chronicles 22, verses 7 through 9, not 8 through 9. And David said to Solomon, "My son, as for me, it was in my mind to build a house to the name of the Lord my God. But the word of the Lord came to me, saying, You have shed much blood and have made great wars. You shall not build a house for my name, because you have shed much blood on the earth in my sight. Behold, a son shall be born to you, who shall be a man of rest, and I will give him rest from all his enemies all around. His name shall be Solomon, for I will give him peace and quietness to Israel in his days." Seems when you read that and you just read it like straight out of text, no context, no knowledge of David's story, nothing like that. It just looks like because David made war, he was a man of war. Because he was a man of war, he can't build a temple. And that's right. That is true. That is the reason that he was not who built the temple. But it's not because war is bad. That's not because making war against an enemy is bad. Because if you do take context and history into your thinking, then you realize that David was chosen to be king of Israel. He defended Israel from their enemies according to God. He listened to God in the warfare that he did make. I mean, obviously everyone makes mistakes, and he did stupid stuff inside of warfare, like getting Bathsheba's husband killed during war. But the war itself wasn't bad. It's the actions that you take out, like separately, singularly, that will complicate things. But we know for a fact that what he did to Uriah and Bathsheba was wrong. And yet that's not the reason that he's not allowed to build the temple. It's because he made war, has a lot of blood on his hands. But we see war in the Bible, in the Old Testament at least, as directed by God a lot of times. And in this case, it's like the most famous and beloved king, the man after God's own heart, who is set aside because he made war. So the simple answer to the question, unfortunately, is not simple at all. It is war is justified when it's justified. And there's not like good, solid standards for when that should be allowed. But I like to think about this story like this. God didn't kick David off the throne. He didn't say that he couldn't help prepare for the temple, because in the verses before 7 through 9, it's talking about David getting all the supplies and trying to prep for a temple to be built, even though he knew that he was not going to build it. And God didn't make it where David's son could not build it. It is his son, the heir to the throne of Israel, Solomon, David's son, is who will build the temple. So the son of the man of war was allowed to. The man of war was not allowed to build the temple. But he was allowed to build up the foundation, if that makes sense. He prepared Israel to be able to build this temple. He's preparing his son with the supplies to build this temple. He's raising his son up so that perhaps he might stay according to the will of God so that he can build this temple and lead the nation. And we know Solomon had his own faults because every single man in the Bible outside of Christ has his own faults. And usually the faults are highlighted more so than the good things that they do, so that you don't have the opportunity to become a worshiper of man. You have to worship Christ. Making war is not unjustifiable. Whether that be aggressive warfare or defensive warfare, both can be justifiable. But what are the ends you're trying to come to? What are the means and methods you are using? And do the means complicate your ends? Something that was said in class here at the Patriot Institute the other day, I proposed a question to the class because it was a time of kind of peer-led review, I suppose. And we were watching a documentary about the frontiersmen that kind of built the United States. And some of the stories that were covered involved how Americans and American troops handled the Native Americans, or the Indians, whichever you prefer. I'm not one to try to hold you to some politically correct standard. You can say whatever you want. Is what the Americans did to them justified biblically in the context of history? And they just kept asking for my answer, like, no. I'm the one that's asking the questions. Like, y'all have to answer. Is it justifiable? And if you say no, then why not? Because you can find pretty obvious text in the Bible, especially if you're coming out of a time frame like the late 1700s and the early 1800s, where the majority of the country, if they were religious at all, then they were Christian. They didn't have other beliefs. So they would have backed up everything that they were doing according to Christianity. I think that most likely, I'm still looking into this. I wish I would have found a hard set answer before I come on here, because it's all philosophy without that hard answer. But you see the stories of when Israel went in to take the promised land, and God's telling them, okay, when I set this land before you, go in and destroy this tribe, this tribe, this tribe, this tribe, this tribe, this tribe. Very specific to destroy them. Not to make them slaves, but to destroy them, like completely eradicate a people. And they didn't do that. And when they didn't do that, they fell out of covenant with God. So I think that you can see it as, okay, they would probably use this to justify their actions, whether they actually believed it or whether they were trying to kind of throw a front so that they could save face. So I'm not saying that text justifies it. I'm just saying that you can twist a lot of stuff, and whether twisted or not, that seems to justify a lot of the actions taken against the natives, because you had this new nation where it was mostly made up, or at least founded on, the belief systems of people that came here fleeing tyranny, and also the belief systems of a people that up to this point, and up to fairly recently, believed that the church was Israel. And if the church is Israel, if the church is the chosen people, the people who fall under the headship of Christ, if they are the chosen people, then the promises of God apply to the chosen people. They didn't have a physical example of Israel to muddy things up and confuse the people. The waters were clear. It's like, okay, the church is Israel. So this Bible is always literate. Not literate. That is the wrong word. Sometimes I say long words to sound photosynthesis. You have to be literate to read the Bible, but what I was trying to say is the Bible is always literal as well as philosophical. So it can be symbolic and it can be completely literal. Every part of it. Because there's always going to be more that you know about God as you build your relationship on this earth throughout eternity. You're never going to know everything about God. It's God, and you are not God. So if you think that you and your people who have come into this new land that is uncharted territory didn't even know it existed until like 2 centuries ago, century and a half maybe, so it takes a while for news to spread when there's no technology. If you think that you, as the church or Israel, coming into this new land that is completely void of civilized civilization. I've had an argument with a buddy of mine of can civilization, to the true extent of that word, exist outside of Christianity? I don't remember if I talked him into my side, but I think no. I don't think that a civilization can exist. I think that cultures can exist. But a civilization involves being civilized. And without Christianity and Christian morals, you cannot be civilized, because you cannot be civil. So if you're coming into this land and it's full of uncivilized people and no aspects of a moral background as you've known and how your people have known for centuries, then I can see how you could read that passage. I believe it was Deuteronomy. If you'll give me just a moment. I think I still have it bookmarked even. Yes. Deuteronomy 7, 1 and 2. When the Lord your God brings you into the land which you go to possess, and has cast out many nations before you, the Hittites and the Girgashites, and the Amorites and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than you. And when the Lord your God delivers them over to you, you shall conquer them and utterly destroy them. You shall make no covenant with them, nor show mercy to them. I can see how you might take that in the literal concept, because it is a ton of people. Like, they don't know that. We know that now. There were a ton of natives, but by the time that settlers got to them, there weren't near as many, because disease spreads a lot faster than civilization. So there were a whole lot that had already been wiped out by disease, which also, thinking in context, would have been seen as an act of God had they known that it was going on. If you're coming from the position of these people have to be cleared out so that we can take possession of the land. So I'm not saying that they're right or wrong. I'm saying think for yourselves. Be a little critical in your thinking so that you can understand. Do not judge people outside of the context of their history. Just like you don't read the Bible according to what you believe. You read the Bible according to context, and context alone. So war can be justified. Drastic war can be justified. But how do we know when it's justified? Well, that's the hard part. That's why it's been debated for years, because you don't know. People are always fine with the means justifying the ends if the ends are met. But a lot of times they're not met. People do horrible things to get to a certain mean, but because they started out without a moral background. That's where I was going whenever I was saying a buddy of mine said something in class. He said that the ends always justify the means unless the means complicate or compromise the ends. And that's true. You have to start out with a moral background so that your means cannot complicate your ends. When you do not start with a moral hierarchy, is probably a better term for it, then there's nothing to hold you into any set of limitations so that you don't commit atrocities. But even knowing that, even knowing that the ends do not justify the means without a moral hierarchy, you still can't judge people in history outside of their context. You're always going to think people are dumber or more evil or just plain lazier or more bloodthirsty or more about anything negative in history coming from now. You look back and you're like, well, that was dumb. Yeah, they didn't have the knowledge to know any better. You judge them according to context of their time. We got to visit the American Journey Experience and the Wall Builders Museum in Texas. The AGE is in Dallas, kind of outskirts of Dallas, and the Wall Builders Museum is in Aledo, Texas. And we got to visit them. And one of the stories that Mr. Tim Barton was telling us was about the death of George Washington. He was trying to warn us that if people are okay with getting things that no one actually cares about getting right or wrong, then how much more are they going to get the things that matter wrong on purpose? Because when you look up on Google, if you have access to your phone right now, just type in and ask, how did George Washington die? I'll wait about 5 seconds. And if you've got it pulled up, it will just say a throat infection. You're like, oh, cool. No, a throat infection didn't kill him. Honestly, what he had would have been fine in a few days and maybe some chicken noodle soup. But they treated it horribly to the extent that it was basically a torturous assassination of our first president, unknowingly, by the best doctors around. The story goes that Washington was in the woods trying to prep. I don't remember if it was for building or just surveying or whatnot, but it started to rain on him, so he was going home. He was trying to get home. And then it started to snow on him. And whenever he got into his house, he wanted dinner. There's some official records, there's some unofficial records, but Tim went with the more unofficial one, more so for joking, but also because, it's somewhat likely that he walked in covered in these snowy, wet clothes. He's hungry, he's tired, he just wants to eat. He don't want to do anything else. So Tim went. He probably walked in and his wife was just like, "Hey, honey, you should probably go change out of those wet clothes. Then you can eat dinner." And you probably had Washington like, "I'm fine, food woman." And within the next couple of hours, he kind of came down with a cold. Coughing, hacking up, whatever. Probably got strep throat, to be honest. And so they started bloodletting. And I don't know if you know what bloodletting is, but that means that you would cut yourself on purpose to let blood out because the blood was bad and that's why you were sick. So he started letting this blood out before doctors got around. He got I don't even remember what it's called. It looks like a weird set of keys, honestly. It was a bloodletting tool that was just passed around in the community. Like, it wasn't held by a doctor. It was just one that people would borrow. So probably not very sanitary. But he just started letting out blood, and after a while it didn't work. So he let out more blood, and then after a while they called the doctors because he was still getting worse. So the doctor got there, and they let out more blood. And when that didn't work, they let out more blood. And when that didn't work, they started to give him mercury because they thought that would help. I don't know if you know this, but mercury is very poisonous. And it's even more poisonous when you don't have the white blood cells to fight stuff off and your immune system is shot because you don't have any blood. And when mercury didn't work, they started blistering him all over so that it would pull the bad blood from around his throat down towards the blisters on his arms and such. And when that didn't work, I don't even remember the other drug that they gave him, but they gave him something else that made him end up just basically getting forced dysentery. Like, this is crazy talk, right? Like, you're giving people mercury and making them crap themselves and letting all of their blood leave, as well as giving them chemical burns so that they blister up, and that's supposed to help them? You'd shoot someone for doing that nowadays because people know better, and like, that is straight up torture. But back then, it was the most beloved figure in the United States. He had the best doctors around, the best medical knowledge, And that's what they did to try to get him over a throat cold. So he didn't die of a throat infection. He died from malpractice. Malpractice without malice. So don't judge people outside of the context of history. You can't say that the doctors were evil. They were doing their absolute best. They're just wrong. And George Washington let them do it. Like, he thought they were right too. We know better. So if I went back in time, and I had all my memories, and someone said, we're going to bloodlet because you have a sore throat. I'm like, get away from me. I'm going to go make some soup. I'll be fine in a day and a half. I'm not going to go, just slice my arms open and pull all my blood out because my blood is cursed, yes. You have to judge war the same way. One of the answers they did manage to drag out of me in this class session, they asked me, what are the moral obligations of Christians in regards to foreign entities? I don't, first off, believe that you have moral obligations as a citizen of a nation. I think you only have obligations to your own nation. As a Christian, it's a little more complicated, but not much more complicated. As a Christian, you have moral obligations to your family and moral obligations to your nation at a higher level than you have moral obligations to the rest of the world. You must treat the rest of the world as Christ would treat them. But everybody can't go around just doing missionary work and pure missionary work. You have to do things that sustain a society so that missionary work, by those called to missionary work, can continue at a higher capacity and with better outcomes. Your moral obligation as a father or a son, even, as a member, a citizen of the United States of America, is to do what's best for your family, which, if you take it as the butterfly effect goes, will be what's best for the nation and not what's best for the other nations. If you do something that betters another nation, that's fine. It should be extra, like a byproduct. Like if we enter into some trade agreement with 2 or 3 nations and it's good for Canada, but it's not good for Mexico or these other 3, but it's good for us. The only reason you should take that deal is if it's better for you than it is for the rest. It doesn't have to be like a tyrannical, overpowering, we get 70% of the profits come from this specific kind of trade. No. But if you get less than half, let's say you have it at even, you have it at 50-50. You're like, you know what, we really like this nation, we want to be friendly to them, 50-50, we'll go at it. That's fine, you can decide that. Do not take 49%. Your obligations are to the nation, not to the rest of the world. This international law system is stupid. Like, you could go into more complicated conversation, obviously, than me saying, this is stupid. Because a lot of people say that. But look at the rest of the world. As things have become more about the world as a whole and trying to do what's best for the world, quotation marks, like on both sides, like little rabbit ear things when you bend your fingers down, like, well, emphasize this word, that kind of thing. Yeah, not best for the world. The world has declined as nations have started to care more about the rest of the world than their own citizens. Europe is in complete moral decay. You've got like 2 countries that are worth a darn anymore. Like Poland's great. Italy's doing better. Spain is seeing its own revival. Maybe they'll get to where they're good. And you got this one little tiny country. It's a micro nation. It's a city-state that has left another nation. I believe it left Italy. Give me just a second. It's actually a fairly cool story on that little one. It's not like it would be useful as an ally because it's so small, but it's a story about a monarch that actually used power to stop a progressive aspect. I wish I was better with technology, then I could look stuff up faster. Monaco? Where's Monaco at? I'm trying to remember where Monaco is. I think it came out of Italy, but I couldn't promise you. But the king of Monaco, who's technically not a king, his title is prince, but he acts kind of like a king, vetoed an abortion bill. Like the nation voted to legalize abortion up to 12 weeks. But Prince Albert II is a Catholic and a Christian, and he just said, no, like, I still have power. There's a lot of monarchies in the world where it's just a head of the state thing where they're completely useless. Like King Alfred or Albert or what, I don't even know his name. I don't care about Britain, but the King of Britain is useless. He has no power. He's just a face. He's a mascot that gets pummeled and pushed around. Prince Albert II still has powers, enough so that he vetoed a legislative move that was pushed forward to legalize abortion. He did what's best for his nation. The nation didn't know that, but he did. He knows that what he did was right according to the eyes of God and therefore better for the nation. But that's like it. There's like 3 places over there that are worth anything anymore. And it's sad because all of this started to come on after democracies and republics and things like that started to become popular. As governments fell under monarchies, monarchies fell away or were diminished to the extent of the British Crown, where they hold no power. Moral decay skyrocketed. You don't typically like to quote people that are deemed as undesirable or evil. But you can't say that every single thing that an evil person says or does is wrong or just wrong, not even or, just is wrong. And you can't say that everything that a good person does is right. Bad people do a few good things, good people do a few bad things, so on and so forth. I remember seeing a video, and it was an Arab leader. I don't know if it was a king or what. It was a Muslim. I'm not going to make it a habit of going around quoting Muslims. But it was funny to me, because this is one of those times when I look and you're like, he's kind of right in a lot of ways. And he was talking about the West and their democracies. And it's like, it goes like, we the people. But the people are dumb. It's just like, yeah, in a lot of ways, that's true. When you start caring about things outside of your circle that you can't do anything about, it gives you an excuse to only be selfish within your circle. And that's how you get all of the atheist, liberal, progressive movements in the United States, because the only thing they care about is what's going on in the rest of the world and what affects them. Like specifically them, not their family. They don't have any family values. Not their relationships, because they're gay. Those aren't relationships. That's just being a sexual deviant. And moral decay skyrockets because those people can vote. Individualism is good within Christian boundaries, especially in a nation founded on Christianity. A Christian nation should have Christian boundaries on who can vote and propagate the system that we have. Talking about a republic, Benjamin Franklin said to a man asking what kind of government they had, "You have a republic if you can keep it." I don't remember for sure, but I believe it was John Adams that said that the system of government that we have, the Constitution itself, is only useful for a moral and godly people. It will fail outside of anybody else. If it's not John Adams, then it was a signer of the Constitution. I know that for a fact. I'm not great with names. I wish I was better. I'm trying to get better, but it's hard to get better at remembering things. But if I'm not mistaken, it was John Adams that said that the Constitution is wholly inadequate outside of a moral and godly people. We don't have a moral and godly people anymore because we did not keep it within the boundaries on who can vote. People look at the old voting laws way back when, and it was like 25-year-old landowner and a man. And they're like, racist, ageist, and I don't even remember, there was nothing about race in that section originally. Had nothing to do with race. They just say racist because it's old white people. So like, oh, they're racist because it's hard for blacks to own land. And it's like, yeah, but it was legal. They could. It wasn't illegal, so it had nothing to do with that. Patriarchy. That's the word that the feminists like to throw out there when guys seem to have a better opportunity. No, those people had a stock in the country. If you're 25 at the time and you're a man, you're probably married, you probably have kids, so you're going to do what's best for your family. If you're a landowner, then you belong to the country because you can't afford to keep the land if you ain't there taking care of it, defending it from Indian invasions, defending it from just squatters, being able to keep it from falling apart because it's untamed land that has been tamed within the last few decades. And the age thing, like the fact that it was 25, was just like, hey, maybe younger people are not as wise. If they were to go back to those exact qualifications, I'd lose my voting rights. You can't lose things that aren't rights, that are rights. You can lose things that are privileges. Voting is a privilege. It should belong in certain boundaries. And the male thing was because women are under the headship of men in Christ. Outside of Christ, you can't hold people to standards that they don't believe in. As far as that kind of thing goes, you can't make it. Men are not better than women. Women submit to men under Christ in the church. Wives, submit to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives. They love their wives, so they vote right. Those were set standards in a Christian nation, limited by the faith of Christianity. That is how things should be. You would not see the moral decay that you do now. You cannot get there outside of war. That's why I'm talking about it today. We have been taken over monetarily by foreign influence. We are being taken over internally by foreign influence and just sheer mass of population being flooded into the U.S. We are not shipping out enough people, and as far as the deportations goes, those are not mass deportations. They are targeted deportations for show that are not meaningless, but on the grand scheme of things are useless. Muslims are flooding the country. Islam continues to be allowed. Sharia law is at least being banned in some states, but not all. You can't allow the increase of a false religion in a Christian nation. Christians in non-Christian nations, Christians that find themselves coming to salvation, coming to Christ in Iran or Uganda or China, are coming into it under persecution. Their path to expanding the faith is to do as much missionary work. And if it comes to it, allowing their own martyrdom. Christians that rule a nation are not supposed to allow the same thing to happen for a false religion. Christians have become lazy because of their belief systems around Revelation, around the end times. You're to go out and take dominion. You don't take dominion by going, oh, we got this. We got this nice nation, really likes Christians. Let's let a bunch of Muslims and Buddhists and Hindus in. That'll help. No, you won't be a Christian nation for long. And now you've put yourself into persecution, which is like the worst chess move in history. It's like if you had the queen lined up and your opponent, they had their queen lined up, and your opponent goes, hey, don't move there. You'll put yourself in checkmate. You go, and just move there anyways, because you're an idiot. People are afraid of how they'll be spoken of while they're alive, of how they'll be spoken of after they're gone, to the point that they're not willing to do anything that will make it worth talking about them at all. No one is going to remember the people that we hate at the moment. Hatred's a strong word. Hate their actions. Better description. Most of Congress is compromised. Most of Congress will be forgotten in the next 20 years. They've done nothing great. Thomas Massey will not be forgotten. Just like we didn't forget Ron Paul. He's trying to keep the U.S. fiscally responsible to the detriment of the face of the Republican Party. Because you show infighting. That's fine. There should be infighting. The Republican Party is fallen. That doesn't mean that every Republican is bad. It's kind of like the old Reformationists. Whenever the Protestant Reformation was really taken off, they would point out the leaders of the Catholic Church, but they wouldn't condemn the Catholic people as a whole. The shepherds were who were messed up, not the flock. It's time for people to start standing up and be willing to do the things where, yes, they're going to have a burden on their shoulder for the rest of their lives. But their kids and their grandkids and their great-grandkids and their nation and whatever their nation becomes will have benefited from the burden that they were willing to carry. David was willing to carry the burden of being a man of war. Now, because of that, he was not able to see the fulfillment of God's holy temple being built. But because of his actions, because of his willingness to carry that burden, his son was able to build the temple. I don't know what it would look like. I'm not a general. I'm not a president. I'm just someone who doesn't want to be trapped in this seemingly endless cycle. Not even a cycle. It's like one of those graphs that just constantly goes up. Looking like an economic graph, and the line just keeps going up. But it's not a good line. It's not, here's your profit. It's, here's the interest you owe. Moral decay continues to rise. Threat levels continue to rise, and people continue to live with blinders on their eyes because they're unwilling to see the truth, and they're even more unwilling to do anything about it. It's time to rise and change this nation for the better. Whatever burden may be put on your shoulders by those actions. But start with the moral hierarchy. Do not do anything that compromises the ends, but do everything that gets you to the ends justifiably. Well, y'all, that is it for this episode of the Southern Steel Show. I have a little bit of news, but you're welcome to leave if you don't want to hear it. I am currently working on a website to try to get everything that I have my hands in together. I don't have my hands in much right now, but kind of just a site where you can go and find me wherever you need to find me. It'll have a way to contact me if you wanted to reach out. Hopefully in the future, over the next year or so, I might even get some merch up if I become somewhat successful. Not even really successful, just kind of I want hats, and you can really only order hats in bulk. So it's like, well, I want a custom hat, so I'll sell the hats, but I really did this so I could have a hat. That kind of thing, because this is going to continue to be more of a personal blog than anything else. I'm not planning on making it like a big successful thing. I'll take whatever I can get, but I'm not willing to compromise my own beliefs or how I do things to get there. What I'm really looking forward to on getting this website put together is not just that you have access to get to all of the places where you can find my show or my shorts or whatever, but I'm hoping to get to where I can put some writing in there, because a lot of times you can take little short articles and add them into a website. I'm hoping that if I can do that, then sometimes you will hear from me, but I might be able to involve some of my friends that either think similarly or differently, because I am here for the conversations. I'm here for talking and figuring things out in truth and not in fear. And last but not least, I'm working on a page right now in the website where it has a reading list, like my recommended reading list, what I'm reading through right now. I'm just going to kind of add to it over time. If I can make it work, then I'll have links where you can click on them and go buy the books if you would like. They would not come with any promo codes. None of the money would come from me. I don't print books, but just access to them if you would like to join me in this reading list. In secondary news, I would like to talk a little bit about Patriot Academy. If you've been around a while, then you've heard me talk about both the Institute and the Academy. They do not sponsor this, so I'm not affiliated with them officially. I just really like the organization. They mean a lot to me. They have really been foundational in my growth in the political, historical, and theological world. And that's what sparked my passion for critical thinking and really doing the research yourself and not just sitting around, being lazy, not being willing to see the truth, not being willing to act on the truth. They did that for me. If you want to get involved in your own way, whether that means taking a class for yourself, going on and just buying some of their courses, or whether that means donating so that other young people like myself can get involved that maybe couldn't afford it to begin with, there are tabs that you can go to at patriotacademy.com that will lead you to a fundraising page where you can donate specifically to certain events like Leadership Congress or the Institute or the making of some of the production type stuff that Rick Green and some of his fellow peers make. Like, there's a general fund and there's specific tabs that you can go to and donate to them. I know that I have appreciated in the past. Up to now, I have never had to pay for any of my learning when it comes to Patriot Academy, when it comes to the Institute. I was blessed with a $15,000 scholarship this year so that I could attend the Institute for 9 months. I have been blessed with scholarships or with private donors in the past so that I've never had to pay to go to one of the Patriot Academy Leadership Congresses that are the short legislative training sessions that they do all around the country during the summer. If I was you and I really wanted to make a difference, I would go directly to the Leadership Congress Fund and donate there so that you could give scholarships to young people, whether they be 16, whether they be 25. Anywhere in that age range, they are open to go. It is allowed for them to go. A lot of people cannot afford to go, but you could help in that if you would like. Thank you again for listening to the Southern Still Show. I will see you next time. God bless.